Hello. Chapter 6. I'm just jumping right in. This is much harder when you're around, Kyoshi said to Avatar Yun. She and Yun sat on the floor in one of the innumerable receiving rooms. Big palace. The freestanding screen paintings had been folded up and pushed to the walls, and the potted plants had been set outside to make room for the giant piles of gifts that guests brought for the Avatar. Yun lay on his back, taking up valuable free space in her very small room. He lazily waved a custom-forged filigreed blade around in the air, stirring an imaginary upside-down pot with it. I have no idea how to use this. I don't like swords. A boy who doesn't like swords, Kyoshi said with a mock gasp. Put it in the armory pile and we'll get Rongi to teach you at some point. There were a lot of guesses around the village about what exactly Kyoshi did in the mansion. Given her orphaned, unwanted status, the farmer's children assumed she handled the dirtiest, most impure jobs, dealing with refuse and carcasses and the like. The truth was quite different. What she really did as her primary role was pick up after Yun. Tidy his messes. The Avatar was such a slob that he needed a full-time servant following his wake, or else the chaos would overwhelm the entire complex. Soon after taking her on, the senior staff discovered Kyoshi's strong, compulsive need to put things back in their rightful place, minimize clutter, and maintain order. So they put her on Avatar containment duty. This time the pile they sat hip deep. It was not Yun's fault. Wealthy visitors were constantly showering him with gifts in the hope of currying a favor, or simply showering him with gifts in the hope, or simply because they loved him. As big as the house was, there wasn't enough room to give each item a display of honor. On a regular basis, Kyoshi had to sort and pack away heirlooms and antiques and works of art that seemed to get more lavish and more numerous over time. Oh, look, she said. Another pie show board. Oh, that one's pretty, said Yun. This is, without exaggeration, the 44th pie show board you own now. You're not keeping it. Ugh, you're ruthless. She ignored him. He might be the Avatar, but when it came to her officially assigned duties, she reigned above him. And Kyoshi needed this right now. She needed this normalcy to bury what Kelsang had told her, that she might be the Avatar. Despite her best efforts, it kept rising up. The notion that she was betraying Yun and swallowing up what belonged to him. As he lounged on his elbows, Kyoshi noticed Yun wasn't wearing his embroidered indoor slippers. Are those new boots? She said, pointing at his feet. The leather they were crafted from was a beautiful gray with fur trim around a trim like powdery snow. Probably baby turtle seal hide, she thought, with revulsion. Yun tensed up. I found them in the pile. They don't fit you. Give them over. I'd rather not. He scooched backwards. She crawled over to peer at the boots at a closer angle. Did you stuff the extra space with bandages? They're ridiculously too big for you. Take them off. She got to her knees and grabbed his foot with both hands. Kyoshi, please. She paused and looked up at his face. It was filled with pure dread, and he rarely ever raised his voice at her. It was the second time today an important person to her acted strangely. She forced herself to acknowledge the two incidents were not related. So he had developed an intense taste for footwear. She'd make note of it. Yun sat up and put his hands on Kyoshi's shoulder. Oh, do you remember the previous chapter where he was getting trained on sharp points under his feet to make him firebend? Like, you have to firebend because you're hurting. So his feet were probably all cut up and beat up. She fixed at him with her jade green eyes. She had long since become inured to his flirty smiles whenever he wanted to rise out of her, his puppy dog pout when he wanted a favor. But his expressions of earnest desire was a weapon he did not pull out very often. The way his troubled thoughts softened the sharp edges of his face were heart-piercing. What's bothering you? Come on, spill it, Yun. I want you to come on a journey with me. I need you by my side. Kyoshi choked on her surprise. He was offering a taste of the world that only an exalted few got to sample. To be a companion of the Avatar, even for a moment, was an honor beyond reckoning. Flying into the sunset, huddled close to Yun, the wind in their hair. If Auma and the other villagers were jealous of her before, they'd go foaming mad with envy now. What kind of trip is this? Where is this taking place? The Eastern Sea, near the South Pole. I'm signing a treaty with Tagaka the pirate. Well, so much for fantasy. Kyoshi knocked Yun's hands off her shoulders and sat back on her knees. The motion felt like it helped drain the heat out of her face. The Fifth Nation? You're going to sit at a table with the Fifth Nation. So in this book, Earth, Water, Fire, Air, 4 nations. Pirates are kind of a fifth nation. And you want me to come with you? What was she going to do surrounded by a band of bloodthirsty pirates that was bigger than most of the Earth King's provincial armies and militias? Sweep up their cutlasses? There's some great words. Militia, that's from the American Revolution. Militia is an army made by people local. A cutlass is a sword. I know how much you hate outlaws. I thought you might appreciate seeing a victory of them up close. It's only political, but still. Kyoshi puffed her cheeks in frustration. Yun, I am basically your nanny. You need Rangi for this mission. Better yet, you need the Fire Lord's entire personal legion. Rangi's coming, but I want you as well. You won't be there to fight if things go wrong. You'll just stand around and watch me as things go right. Why? Perspective. I need your perspective. He pulled out a pie show tile he'd nicked from the set she'd put away and squinted at like a jeweler in the light. Nicked is a word they use in England that means stole. Not used commonly in America. Nicked it. It is sad that I want a regular person there, someone who'll be scared and impressed and overwhelmed just like me, and not another professional avatar monitor. Afterward, I want you to tell me I'm as good as Young Chen or Salai. Ooh, there's an avatar name that I haven't heard yet. Salai. S-A-L-A-I. Maybe he was there was Young Chen? Maybe he was the fire before Young Chen. S-A-L-A-I. Salai. Regardless of whether that's true. I know it sounds stupid, but I need the presence of someone who cares about me first, and history second. I want you to be proud of me, Yun, not satisfied with the performance of the Avatar. Kyoshi didn't know what to do. The idea sounded mind-numbingly dangerous. She wasn't equipped to follow the Avatar into battle or politics, not like the great companions of past generations. Her stomach wound into a knot as she thought of the secret between her and Cal Sang, that she might actually be the Avatar. They wouldn't get the time they needed to figure this out. The world demanded an Avatar or else. It'll be safer than it sounds, Yun said. Oddly enough, most Dao Fei gangs hold quite a bit of respect for the Avatar. Either they're superstitious about the Avatar's spiritual powers, or they're intimidated by someone who can drop all 4 elements on their heads at once. He tried to sound lighthearted, but he looked more and more pained the longer she kept him waiting in silence. Was it so dire of a choice? Jianju would never risk Yun's life, and she had a hard time believing Yun would risk hers. Really, the situation wasn't as grand or complicated as she made it out to be. Avatar business and the fate of the Earth Kingdom was for other people and other times. Right now, Kyoshi's friend was depending on her. She'd be there for her friend. I'll come. Someone has to clean up after you. Yun shuddered with release. Thank you. He caught her fingers and brought them gently to his cheek, nuzzling into them as if they were ice for a fever. Kyoshi flushed all the way down to her toes. She reminded herself that his casual tendency to be close to her, to share touches, was part of his personality. She caught glimpses and heard stories from the staff that confirmed it. One time, he kissed the hand of a princess of Omashu for a second longer than normal and scored an entire new trade agreement as a result. It had taken her a very long time after starting at the house to convince herself that she was not in love with Yun. Moments like this threatened to undo all that hard work. She let herself plunge under the surface and enjoyed this moment of contact. Yun reluctantly put her hand down. There. He looked at her, the ear out of the ceramic tile with a smile. 2, 1. Rangi slid open the door with a sharp click. He knew she was coming. Avatar, she turned to Kyoshi. You've barely made any progress. Look at this mess. We're waiting for you, said Yun. We've decided to burn everything. You can start with those hideous silk robes in the corner. As your avatar, I command you to light them up right now. Yes, and set the entire mansion on fire, said Rangi. She always tried as she could to remain dignified, but she cracked on occasion. Exactly. Burn it all to the ground. Reduce it back to nature. We've achieved pure states of mind. You would start whining the moment you had to bathe with cold water, Kyoshi said to him. There's a solution for that, said Yun. Everyone would go to the river, strip down naked, grab the nearest firebender, and ta-da! A decorative pillow hit him in the face. Kyoshi's eyes went wide in disbelief. Rangi looked utterly horrified at what she'd done. She'd attacked the avatar. With a pillow, though. She stared at her hands like they were covered in blood. A traitor's eternal punishment awaited her in the afterlife. Yun laughed, burst out with laughter. Kyoshi followed her side, shaking until they hurt. Rangi tried not to. She put her hand over her mouth, but despite her best efforts, little giggles and snorts leaked out her fingers. An older member of the staff walked by, frowning on this laughing trio, which set them off further. Kyoshi looked at Yun and Rangi's beautiful, unguarded face, freed from the weight of her duties only for a moment. She thought of how unlikely it was that she'd found these friends. This is what I need to protect, Kyoshi thought to herself. Yun defended the world, Rangi defended Yun, but as far as Kyoshi was concerned, her own sacred ground was marked off by the limits of where her friends stood. This is what I need to keep safe above all else. The sudden clarity of her realization caused mirth to evaporate. Her mirth. Mirth is sadness. She maintained a grin so the others wouldn't notice her change in mood. Her fist tightened around nothing. Spirits help anyone who will take these people, my friends, away from me. End of chapter 6.